felt the tremor of that change. Chapter 2. Smoothies, Stairs, and a Seed of Doubt. The next morning, the kitchen, usually a hub of cheerful chaos, felt different. A quiet tension lingered in the air, a residue of the previous day's confrontation. Reba, in a rare display of culinary experimentation, was hunched over a blender, the worry machine battling against the morning quiet. The counter was littered with a bewildering array of fruits, vegetables, and powders: spinach, kale, bananas, protein powder, chia seeds. It was a far cry from her usual breakfast of coffee and a quick piece of toast. She wore a determined expression, a slight furrow in her brow as she consulted a recipe on her phone. "Hey, Mom, you making some pancakes?" Ben asked, drawn by the unusual activity and the faint worry sound. He shuffled in, still looking half asleep, the scent of fresh coffee a welcome antidote to the lingering pizza aroma from last night. "No," Reba announced, holding up a glass of lurid green liquid, its color suspiciously vibrant. "I'm making everyone a power smoothie, and this afternoon, I'm taking a power walk." Her voice held a note of defiant optimism, a challenge to the unspoken skepticism in the room. Ben and Van, who had just entered, exchanged incredulous glances. Vaniver, the comedian, couldn't resist a jab. "Power walk. I don't forget your power king," he mimed, an old person struggling with a walking stick, a smirk playing on his lips. Cheyenne, Reba's daughter and Van's wife, shot Van a sharp glare. She was fiercely protective of her mother. "Van, that is not nice. If Mum does aerobics, she could shatter her hip." She crossed her arms, a disapproving frown on her face. Reba, however, simply raised an eyebrow, a dangerous glint in her eye that promised swift retaliation. Her voice dropped to a low, even tone, laced with a subtle threat. "And yet, in the blink of an eye, I can make you both homeless." The threat, delivered with characteristic deadpan humor, effectively silenced them. They knew Reba meant business. Even in her attempts at a healthier lifestyle, her sharp wit and unwavering resolve remained intact. The power smoothie might be new, but the power behind the woman making it was as old as time. Just then, Barbara Jean bounced into the kitchen, a vision of vibrant energy. She was humming a cheerful tune, her steps light, almost buoyant. "Hey everybody, I'm here," and she trailed off, noticing the smoothies, her eyes scanning the array of healthy ingredients with a critical, almost professional eye. Reba, with a swift, almost imperceptible movement, pushed a plate of donuts towards her, a peace offering, a tacit acknowledgement of the elephant in the room. "Oh, shut up and have a donut." The words were gruff, but the gesture was one of affection. BJ, however, bypassed the donuts entirely, a clear sign that something had fundamentally shifted. She looked at Reba's smoothie with a mixture of amusement and disdain. "Oh, Reba, you're not still trying to lose weight by drinking those power smoothies, are you?" She wrinkled her nose, as if the concoction offended her very being. "Jordan, my trainer, says that those are loaded with hidden carbs." Reba stared, a smoothie mustache forming on her upper lip, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Barbara Jean, who had always embraced every dessert with gusto, who had never met a carb she didn't like, was now critiquing her health choices. This was unprecedented. This was a whole new Barbara Jean. "Barbara Jean," Reba began, trying to keep her voice even, a hint of exasperation creeping in. "I am all for adopting a healthier lifestyle. But seriously, I mean, there has to be some sort of..." Her words died in her throat as she noticed Van and Ben. They weren't looking at Reba. They weren't even looking at the donuts. They were staring, open-mouthed, at Barbara Jean. Their gazes were fixed, almost mesmerized. "Will you stop staring at her?" Reba snapped, feeling a strange mix of annoyance and a flicker of something akin to envy. No, not envy. Something else. A vague sense of unease, a feeling of being overlooked. "What?" Van mumbled, still transfixed, his eyes wide with admiration. "We've been staring at her for like the past 2 hours." "Well, she's pretty," Ben added, a little too innocently, his voice hushed. Reba bristled, a defensive spark igniting in her eyes. She placed her hands on her hips. "I'm pretty." "Well, of course you are. You've always been pretty," Van conceded, his tone a little too casual, a little too quick. Then, with a charming, if completely tone-deaf grin, he added, "But she's new pretty." Reba's jaw dropped. The words hung in the air, an insult thinly veiled as a compliment. She knew Van meant no harm, but the sting was undeniable. "Oh, Van, that is such a funny story you can tell to your next wife." Her voice was laced with a sarcasm so sharp it could cut glass. Barbara Jean, however, seemed to bask in the attention, a radiant smile gracing her face. She practically glowed. Her new confidence was almost palpable. She turned to Van, her eyes sparkling, a playful challenge in her voice. "So, Van, you really think that I'm new, pretty?" "Oh, yay," Van enthused, completely oblivious to the emotional landmines he was navigating. "You're like a bleached-out Halle Berry." BJ beamed, clearly delighted by the comparison. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Van, still oblivious to the storm he was brewing, sauntered off to make some calls, probably to his football buddies, completely unaware of the emotional fallout he'd left in his wake. Reba watched Barbara Jean, a complex swirl of emotions churning within her. Barbara Jean was different, not just physically, though the weight loss was undeniable, transforming her generous curves into a more toned, athletic physique. But there was a new lightness to her, a spark of confidence that had always been there, but now seemed to shine brighter, unburdened by... It was a vibrancy Reba hadn't seen in years. "So," Barbara Jean Cheyenne began tentatively, after Van had left, her voice betraying a hint of her own insecurity. She looked at BJ's new figure with a mixture of admiration and a touch of wistfulness. "Yeah," BJ replied, still basking in the glow of Van's compliment. "Is it true that, when you lose a bunch of weight, you, want to do, bounce kabong?" Cheyenne mimed, a suggestive movement with her hands, her cheeks flushing. "Van," Reba exclaimed, mortified. The conversation was veering into territory far too personal for her liking. Cheyenne, however, was already feeling the sting of comparison, her own self-esteem taking a hit. Barbara Jean's transformation had inadvertently highlighted Cheyenne's own anxieties about her post-baby body. "Oh, Cheyenne, don't be upset. You're still hot. You're like a bleached-out Don Brady." Jan Brady," Reba corrected, rolling her eyes. The reference was lost on Van, who was already halfway out the door. "Yemi Marcia," Cheyenne wailed, the classic sibling rivalry from the Brady Bunch surfacing, her frustration bubbling over. Barbara Jean, meanwhile, seemed to float above the fray, her newfound glow almost palpable. She turned to Reba, her eyes shining with genuine enthusiasm, oblivious to the undercurrents of insecurity she was stirring. "So, Reba, I got an idea. You should come down to the gym and meet Jordan, my trainer. Seriously, he will change your life. I mean, he is so much more than a personal trainer. He taught me how to work out and eat right. We go over the clothes I'm gonna wear, the movies I'm gonna see." Reba raised an eyebrow, a skeptical arch. "Whoa, the movies you're gonna see? What's that gotta do with you getting in shape?" The comment seemed entirely out of place, a strange detail that piqued Reba's curiosity. BJ laughed, a bright, carefree sound that filled the kitchen. "Oh, nothing. We just have the same sense of humor. That Tim Allen just kills us. I mean, whether he's playing a dog or Santa Claus, you just buy it." She leaned in conspiratorially, her voice dropping to an excited whisper. "So, you'll come meet Jordan?" Reba shook her head, a strange reluctance gripping her. A tiny, almost imperceptible seed of doubt, planted by Van's words and BJ's effusive praise, began to sprout. "No. Oh, come on, Reba. I want my best girlfriend to meet my best boyfriend." BJ's words tumbled out, innocent enough, but the last two hung in the air, heavy with unintended meaning. A beat of silence. Beach's eyes widened, realizing her slip. A blush crept up her neck. Boyfriend, oh whoops. That came out wrong. She laughed nervously, trying to backtrack. Reba forced a smile, though a tiny seed of doubt had been planted, taking root in her mind. The word, though quickly retracted, resonated with an unsettling frequency. "Well, thanks anyway. But I'm just gonna be here with my smoothie. Delicious. Just like fruit gravy." She took a large gulp of the green concoction, forcing herself to swallow the bitterness that wasn't entirely from the kale. Later that day, Brock walked into the kitchen, looking hairy. He had just returned from a stressful day at the dental office, his tie askew, his shoulders slumped. "Oh, hey, Barbara Jean, here you are. Listen, how would you like to go out and grab a quick lunch? Just the two of us." He tried to sound casual, but a hopeful eagerness was evident in his voice.